Hi there YouTube, welcome back to my channel and hi to my new subscribers. How are you doing today? Here on this channel we talk about all things to do with the African diaspora, music, life, love and everything in between. So if you're interested in those topics, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Help us to grow by subscribing. The aim is to go from 0 to 100 subscribers, so hopefully you can help us out with that and be part of the family, so to speak. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about names, and I wanted to talk about whether it's important that you carry an African name. So here in the UK we tend to have European sounding or European names. So for example, my last name is Lee, and that sounds more Chinese than anything. In fact, you know, quite often people have been expecting a Chinese person to walk in based on my name, and I've shown up, and they've been quite surprised by that. But having said that, you know, I think growing up, this is a bit of a detour, but I didn't really mind the name Lee, because back then, like, Bruce Lee was popping. He was like this Chinese guy, kung fu and all of that. You know, when you're young, you know, it's kind of, everybody was kind of into like martial arts back in those days, and you know, you kind of felt a bit proud about Bruce Lee. But you know, growing up, I started to question it a little bit. I wanted to know a bit more about my own family and my own lineage. So in the UK, so we're classified as, so African Caribbeans born in the UK are classified as UK Black or Black British, and most of us will have a European sounding name. So that again is a legacy of the slave trade and also colonialism. So I don't know if you already know about you know, what happened in terms of slaves not being allowed to keep their own names when they were transported. I don't know if you've seen Roots or read it, but you know, they were transported to the Americas and it was beaten out of them. So they weren't allowed to, often they weren't even allowed to speak their own language. They certainly weren't allowed to communicate with each other in the same language. So what they tended to do was mix them up. So if you have like Yoruba speaking Africans who didn't speak Igbo or vice versa, they would mix everybody up so they couldn't understand each other. So obviously that made it easier and less likely for them to plot their escape and plot any kind of like retaliation towards slave owners or plantation owners. So anyway, in the Caribbean, people who live there tend to have the names of plantation owners as their last names, and that is a direct legacy of that historical event. But you know, recently and even more recently, you do have people who have decided they don't want that anymore, and they've changed their names. So notable people like Cassius Clay was, you know, he changed his name to Muhammad Ali, refused to bear the name of any sort of slave master anymore. Even Louis Farrakhan, which I didn't really know about, was once known as Louis Walcott, and Malcolm X was known before as Malcolm Little. And here in the UK we have a really famous playwright, and his name is Kwame Kwei-Armah, and Kwame was of Jamaican parents, so he was born in the UK though, and I think it was after a trip to Ghana and his own like awakening, he decided to ditch the name Ian Roberts and rename himself Kwame Kwei-Armah. So my question as well is, would you do that? So for me, I found it kind of, you know, the temptation is there, but I think it's the attachment to my parents, you know, and the thought that, you know, they carried that name and they then gave it to me, and I think it's out of respect for them that I would, you know, be more hesitant about changing that. Also in the Caribbean, names are it's really complex in the sense that your name could be Betty and nobody call you Betty ever. They could go through life calling you Jane for the rest of your life, and that's not your name. Another thing they do is they have a tendency to call people by any sort of distinguishing features. So if you've got like a really big nose, they will call you like Big Nose Barry, or if your lips are thick, you know, Thick Lip Susan, or if you're tall, Long Leg Lucy, that kind of thing. If you're light skin, they just call you Red Man. You know, they used to call my dad like Toothpick, because he was so skinny like a toothpick. You know, and they'll call you that forever. So no one could really even know your name. I mean, that happened even kind of recently, quite recently last year, when a really close and family friend died. And when the order of service came out, like my sister called me and she was like, "Who's so and so?" I'm like, "I don't know. Like, I think that's her name." And we've known her like all our life, but we've known her by a different name. So it's almost like they've had a completely different life. You know, so names in the Caribbean are no joke. But I'll tell you one thing that I found really interesting. So if you check Marcus Garvey, the great Pan-Africanist, right? Back to Africa movement, amazing philosopher, probably one of the world's greatest philosophers was Marcus Garvey. So Marcus Garvey now, his own movement of followers, they were known as Garveyites. So before you had Rastafari, you had Garveyism and Garveyites as like the greatest Pan-African movement out of the Caribbean. And the name Garvey is actually Irish. So in Ireland you have Garvey and O'Garvey. So when you think about it, like the largest Pan-African movement, the largest African liberation movement was actually named after Ireland, or Irish. It's actually an Irish name. I mean, you really just can't make that stuff up, can you? It's just, it's quite intriguing. But I don't know if like people have really thought about that. So what do you think? Like, would you change your name if you've got, you know, colonial name? Would you change your name to something more fitting of your African ancestry, your African DNA, or would you just keep it? All right, let me know in the comments. Speak to you soon. Peace.